Hello and welcome back to Kerbal Explosive Kolonisation. So, for those of you that need a recap, we are now in the final episode. This is episode 30. This is the last of the saved footage I had before my computer crashed, and luckily I was sort of bringing it all to a close. And what we have here is our rescue ship. Now, we have two ships coming back from Eve. This is one of them. The other one, on the last episode, its engine exploded. So, unfortunately, we are doing a little bit of a rescue mission at the moment, and we are trying to get this one to intercept the other ship. And we'll see how that goes. Now, alongside that, we also have the guys coming back from Eve. We have a ship with an entirely full cryopod there. And it has intercepted one of the older ships, which was essentially space debris, and I'm trying to use that to get them back. So that's what's going on in this mission. We have 3 ships coming back to Kerbal, all of the Kerbals that are in the system coming back, 1 rescue mission ongoing, and let's jump into it. So, first things first, rescuing our crew that's coming back from Eve with no engine, because they are kind of stranded and have no way to adjust course or slow down. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm setting up a bit of a course here, and as you can see here, I was just going through and just checking what was on the ship, because I didn't really know, and I wanted to maximise the life support for as long as possible if I was going to harvest the crew off of the other ship. The problem with that being they're all in cryostasis, so to rescue them I need enough life support, which as you can see I've got a fair amount, but it gets iffy. So I'm going through a few things in my head. I just want to get it intercepted to begin with, so the first thing I do is bring this ship in. As you can see here, I get a few glitches on the way in because of the way that Time Warp occasionally, at least in this version, I hope it's been fixed, Time Warp occasionally causes things to thrust backwards and forwards and jump position in space. But we managed to get there, and the first idea is to ferry people across using the supports that I've got here. As you can see here, I've actually got 3 ships attached to the nose, and that should carry the entire crew. So I decide to move them across first. So after a little bit of jumping about, I moved the pod that was on the end of the nose off of it, realigned some things to get the ship balanced, and decide that I'm going to try and use the massive thrust on the second ship, on the solo ship as I've been calling it, to push the entire lot back into Kerbal. And I reckon with the thrusters that it's got, that was a hell of a stutter, but I reckon with the thrusters that it's got, to be able to move everything back and recover everything, at least in theory. So I don't bother moving any of the crew across. I just join them all up, make sure I set my control places. I print a few things, as you can see there. I'm going through the item printing. Basically, I print out some movable struts and attach them so that everything is even more secure. And then here we go, setting our course for the rapid burn back towards Kerbal, because, well, at this point I was losing patience and I really wanted to get this done before more things exploded on ships and things. So as you can see there, we're massively decelerating and coming as close to Kerbal as close to the star Kerbal as I am comfortable with. But after setting that waypoint, I don't actually initiate it. I jump straight to Eve and try to figure out what I'm going to do with this. I don't want to run out of any supplies here. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do, whether I was going to go down to the planet and figure out from there what I could do, or if I could push the entire thing back using this. The problem that I have is that everybody's frozen and you can't move frozen bodies. The strange advantage is I do actually have enough glycol in the cryo unit that's on this old ship to be able to actually freeze down a couple of people. So that's exactly what we do. We get on with the freezing, we move some people across, which means defrosting them, moving them, freezing them again. I leave some people awake because I've got the life support to do it now that I've moved the life support across from this ship. And there was a little bit of modifications going on here. As you can see, I'm moving the antennas across because this ship didn't actually have any. They were on one of the things that was attached to it. I completely forgot, and it's pretty much the reason it was abandoned, I think, as far as I can remember anyways. So we get our little ship, our little lifeboat, detached, and then, as a ceremonial, we send it into the atmosphere at high speed. So I'm just using that little fusion drive, pulse drive, whatever it is. It's been a problem drive for me, to be honest. But we use that to decelerate the orbit. And here we go. A lovely little low explosion. And there's the perfect glitch for you. Shows that people are still on board that life can. But strangely enough, the life can manages to make it to the surface. So with a lovely little crater, we have one more ship gone from our save file. But with that satisfying explosion, it is time to set course back. So we have to, because this is in a high inclination orbit, we have to do a little bit of orbital mechanics and to power up the engines and start the first of many burns. Now, I have sort of jumped through these quite a lot, and I'm not quite sure what order they're in, but essentially, yeah, we have burn to leave, but we have to push it in small sections. As you can see there, I didn't manage to do a lot with that, so I have to repeat the process and repeat the process and repeat the process, which is very boring when you're watching it, but it's even more boring when you're doing it. But we persevere, and in the middle of pushing all of these little tiny burns, we eventually jump back to our other ship. Now for this one, this is much the same as the last. We are just doing a couple of heavy duty burns. The only difference with this one is thrust. As you can see here, I have got a good chunk of it, and I can really force into what would essentially be a very wasted transfer. But I want to get this done as fast as possible, hence the high thrust, the high acceleration, and to be honest, under these stresses, the high risk. But a long burn later, we are getting to the point where we shut off the engines and coast. Now there's a few orbital adjustments after this, but thanks to the mastery of time travel and editing, we managed to jump ahead to our first ship actually getting back. So this being the usual affair, I just turn on the reactor, crank it to a suitable level to charge up the engines. Once they initialize, start my deceleration burns, and as you can see here, we're doing fairly well. On this ship I had to manage the actual heat output because radiators can't cope with the reactor at full burn and the engines going, so you have to keep the reactor at a lower level and burn the engines at shorter amounts. But if you do it in steps and stages, you can get there, and it did get there in the end. And as it happens, because of the orbital dynamics, this was the first one back, even though the other one's got a lot more thrust, but granted it was coming from further out in the solar system. So once we're back, as you can hear by that, we are defrosting people as we're decelerating, and it continues as we go around. I'm trying to equalize the orbit and at the same time trying to charge up and defrost all of the Kerbals I can. Now, after we've gotten here and gotten equalised, we managed to do a little bit of course correction because I want to try and get everybody back as close to the Kerbal Space Centre as possible. I was running low on patience at this point, so it might not be perfect, but as this ship has a couple of landing craft, I thought it would be a good idea to drop a couple of people down using these landing craft. They were designed for Mars, but they should have the ability, at least with the engines they've got, to get into the atmosphere. At least that was the plan. The problem is that if you put 2 or 3 people in them and none of them are a pilot, you don't have the best of abilities to manage to control everything. So this is akin to how I would fly a spaceship. with no assistance. It is not very pretty. But a little spin stabilization, putting the fins out. And I'm essentially just using the fins for stabilization because they'll keep everything in a rough order. And again, using spin stabilization. So spin it the more you can, the more stable it'll be. And then racking on the rockets once we get atmospheric heating to try and slow down as much as possible. As you can see, just trying to keep an eye on everything. I thought I'd put this all in one sequence so people can see how I'm doing. So I'm trying to manually fly it. It's not going brilliant, but it's going. Yeah, this is not as easy as you would think, as you can tell by my just awful attempt at it. But we do get through the atmosphere, and we are getting pretty close to the KSE. Gear down. And there we go, touchdown, at least on the land. And I'll take that. So, 3 recovered from this ship, and a few more to go. So what I come up with next is to get a few more people down. I decide, and I don't know why I decided this, but I thought it'd be funny, to load 3 people into the second landing craft as we had before. There we go, moving people out, but again, I don't have a pilot in there. However, this ship does have an autopilot if it has somebody in it. So as you can see there, I'm just using its reaction control wheel to throw it out of the cargo bay, because unfortunately this thing doesn't actually have any RCS. So we try and stabilize, and then we use the consummate cheat, time warp, to stabilize everything. And after a little while we managed to get it all in, and then it is time to get down to the surface. So I turned on all the engines as last time, but this time I actually have some stability control. So we do our burns, and between these 2 craft we've got 2 in the little plane-like craft, which is part of the KNES mod. I believe it's still called the KNES mod. And then 3 people in the tuna lander. That's unbelievably loud in my ears. So we are heading into the atmosphere, as you can see, same as last time. Now the little plane on the front of it, the little lander, actually does have the ability to get through the atmosphere on its own and sort of guide itself down, but I wanted the stability to try and get everybody close. So some drogue shoots out to try and slow us down. Unfortunately this time it doesn't work the same way I was last time, but I discovered that I can slightly glide it, which I find absolutely hysterical. And there, as you see, we just go for the parachute landing for both. And luckily, because they're within control range of each other, I managed to land the 2 of them at the same time. This little one doesn't have any landing gear, and I'm not quite sure about it, hence the parachutists. But we get down. There's 2 parachutists on the little ship which managed to land, and another 3 people on that ship. So, all is going good so far, but we have no ability to get the rest down, and that is where this thing comes in. This, at the time of filming, was one of the newer additions to the KNES mod. I haven't checked up, if you are watching and you use this mod, I haven't checked up and know what's going on with it. But I really love these little things, and I was playing about with this so much in the sandbox that I really wanted to throw it in, and I thought this was a good place to put it in. Usual affair, boosting up to orbit. Once we're up there, decoupling, deploying our radiators on this little thing. I love this little utility module at the back of it, and it also has a part that is a grappler. so you don't even need to dock to things, although there is a space for a docking port and a docking port on this one. So the usual affair, rendezvous. I know I'm showing this in a bit longer way than I usually do, but I really wanted to show off these ships. I think they're brilliant. So we get close enough. As usual, it takes a little while to circularize and all of those things. And I am using autopilot. At this point I was using autopilot even more than I normally do, but I wanted to get everything finished and out for everybody. Unfortunately, yeah, the computer crashed in the middle of that, and it's taken 6-7 months. Yeah. Oh, fun and games. But here we are, docking this thing on. Now, there was a little patch for this that I actually wrote most of it, which helped it integrate to the Pathfinder mod and use the shared storage in that. I believe it's been fully integrated with the mod now, which is absolutely fantastic, and it is a brilliant thing because you can change what utility can be stored in this, so you can have KISS storage or you can have parts. But there you go, we grab a whole load of people. That actually happens to be all of the remaining people. And using our trajectories mod again, we are just planning for a landing. And this shows off how amateur I am because I forgot to do it during the daylight. But I do have an ambient brightness mod, so we can't see most of what's going on. But a nice little stable entry. I thought it was a nice little stable entry anyway. It was fairly aggressive, but I'm very aggressive in my landings on this when I want to get it on target, and I really wanted to get it on target here. And there we go, a nice little smooth landing. Takes a while to slow down because it's a fairly light thing, so the friction doesn't work that well. But now we have another ship that is empty. So, back into the atmosphere it goes. Now, as you can see, we do have one little person on board. But, oh well, we'll see what happens. So doing the usual thing, I'm trying to land close to the KSE, but this time I'm not trying to land on the KSE, radiation and all that jazz. So we aim for the atmosphere. I'm checking if anybody else is still on board there. And time warp it in. As we're going down, we get the usual heating. Now this is the part I was quite worried about because obviously I'm deliberately trying to crash this, but I don't want to kill my little Kerbal. So as I come down, I try and invert it, or it inverts automatically because of how heavy the reactor is, so I just throw on the thrust and see if I can get it through the atmosphere. As you can see there, radiators and all sorts falling off of this. I'm trying to switch methods and it's just starting looping everywhere. And there I'm just trying to dump things to try and get it to turn around on me. But it's just not having it. And there we go, we are free. So there will be a little bit of nuclear cleanup after that. And there's the old lag spike with lots of parts hitting the ground at one time. But we have our last Kerbal from the Endeavour back on ground. So, back to the other ships. As you can see here, in my usual aggressive signature style, we are coming in very close and very fast with a huge braking point. So my manoeuvre node is a very large one, and I just have to slam the engines and slow down, which again, long, boring, but surprisingly fun this time because I know it's coming to an end. But after a couple of manoeuvre nodes, we end up at the moon, or at least sliding past the moon. So I'm trying to use that to slow down. I'm basically trying to use everything I can to slow down at this point, and I'm just wasting a bit of time, as you can see here, using the moon's gravity to slingshot me a little bit closer to Kerbal and waste some of my momentum energy. I think that's the right phrasing for it. But yeah, we're trying to get to Kerbal and I'm trying everything that works. But after these few maneuver nodes, I managed to reorientate myself, and none of this could be sped up when I was doing the orientations because of how many parts are actually put together here. And although I dumped some of the supplies, there was a stupid amount of mass that I still had. I don't know why I did it this way. But as you can see here, we are on one of our final burns. I just have to make sure that everything stays cooler. And we just bring it back into orbit and perform a couple of correction burns just to make sure to get everything sort of dotted and sorted and get ourselves aligned again over the equator so that I can land back in the KSC easily. And once everything's sorted, we go through the same process again. So we start defrosting people. And this time I believe I stabilised the orbit before I started defrosting people, but we were getting everybody defrosted and getting them thrown into capsules to throw down to the planet. And once we've got our first thing sorted, this is again another little thing out of the KNES mod, but it's also put together with a couple of parts from the Buffalo mod, which is the little winglets you see on the front, and the Mole mod, both of them from Angel. They are just brilliant mods. And I use a lot of these interchanged with each other. I think they work really well together. But it wouldn't be my show if it went stably, it went normally. So once I undock, I discover that I don't have enough monopropellant to get back to the planet. So we get out and push as the good old Kerbal cheat or trick. Getting back in, pushing, getting out, pushing again. Rinse and repeat over and over again, and oh my god, is this painful when you have to do it. But after many attempts, and as you can see by my jump cuts, there were many, we eventually get to the point where I managed to push it just slightly into the atmosphere. Now, as you can imagine, the idea of landing at the KSC is just nowhere in sight. So what I do is I pull this thing right nose down into the atmosphere to basically drag it into the atmosphere. That is my plan, is to slow down as aggressively as possible. As you can see, I was, well, sort of close. I passed it at least, I could see it. I suppose that means I was at least 50% of the way there. But we managed to get into the atmosphere. And I just dropped that little section at the back, which in hindsight it would have been an idea to drop that before it was braking because it was more weight. And I essentially tried to drift back as far as possible, because this thing, with the mods that I made to it, it's like the winglets that I put on it, it's actually got a really good glide slope. But I decided that I'm not going to get anywhere near as close as well. But after our splashdown, we sent in another recovery craft. This is a more common one, the Flying Phallus, or my strange little SSTO, using the Estonian part of the DSEV mod. I think it's a DSEV mod. All of Angel's mods just get confused in my head. But yep, so this is the Estonian craft. And we're just using this to get nice and close. Again, mech jib away. We're going to dock up, grab the people. And as you can see here, I'm being aggressive as usual. But we just dock in, grab the people, get sorted, and then get to the recovery. Now, this thing actually has a hell of a thrust to weight ratio, a ridiculous amount. It was originally designed as a bit of a lander for Eve, even though I put it on a different rocket and just decided to use it for Kerbal. It is an expensive thing to fly, but again, it is really aggressive. So you recover everything, hopefully. So whatever you're spending and actually flying the thing, again, you make up for it by being able to recover everything. So you're just wasting fuel. But as you see here, I'm trying to get back, trying to get as close as possible, making a bit of a mess of it as usual. But close enough is not too bad. Gear out, parachutes down, and a nice smooth landing. I absolutely love that landing gear. But there we go. So we have some more recovered. And as some of you may have noticed already, there was already an Estonian type module on this, which, after a little bit of transferring people about, I managed to get everybody to fit in this. So they're all attached to the Estonian, and as is the way, we might as well go for broke and try and bring the entire thing back into the atmosphere in the most violent and hysterical way possible. So I used the big old thruster to make another violent entry. And this is at 4 times time acceleration, so yeah, it's pretty impressive. We get the usual heating. I get the usual worry, that's why I'm clicking on everything and making sure. And I've got that window pinned so that just in case I can eject. And the entire ship goes. But we managed to get thrown clear of the debris. And although it's not the full lander, we have lost a lot of parts off of it. We do actually have the ability to land in this absolute shell of a craft. So, if you enjoyed all that, thank you for watching. It will be some time before I put up some more videos, but thanks for joining me on this, and I will see you in the next idea. Bye!